On the phone with me is Governor Bobby Jindal from where right now? You must be on the road traveling who knows how far.
Well, I'm actually temporarily, just briefly here back home in Louisiana. We came here after the debate in Milwaukee and Wisconsin. We're on our way to Florida, and then we'll be obviously in your great state of Wyoming, and then from there we'll be going back to Iowa.
We'll start with the economy. They're telling us unemployment is about 5% right now. Is that about where you would put it, or do you think it's higher?
Oh, Glenn, I think it's much higher. When you look at the real numbers, it's really over 10%. When you look at the number of Americans that have either given up on work or have part-time jobs because they can't get the full-time jobs they want, we've got a record low participation rate in the workforce going. We haven't seen rates this low since the 70s, and we've got a record number of Americans on food stamps. So they can dress up the numbers all they want. Let's be clear, though, during the Obama years, we've seen an increase in poverty. We've seen a decrease in median income. For all of his talk about redistribution and more government spending and taxes, we actually have more inequality. The only income group whose median income has gone up is the top 10%. Clearly, government spending and borrowing has not worked. They're trying to replace the American dream with government dependence, and it's absolutely not worked. So, no, the real unemployment rate is 10%. Middle-class families know their incomes aren't going up. They know it's tougher and tougher to get a good-paying job in this economy.
Okay, it's one of the things that I hear, even from Republicans, and I'm glad that you spent a little bit of time beating up on your own party on this one. What it sounded like to me, you were basically calling the Republican Party back to conservatism. One of the things that bothers me is when I hear even conservatives, or so they think they're conservatives, talk about the president creating jobs.
Well, first of all, the president doesn't create jobs. The president, no government official creates jobs. The reality, and this is such a fundamental point. Obviously, they can create an environment which is either conducive or not conducive to private sector job creation. But this was the point I was trying to make during this debate, which is that we have a fundamental choice. You either grow the government economy or the American economy, and they're either or. They're mutually exclusive. If you want to grow the American economy where jobs and wealth and opportunities are created, you have to shrink the government economy. There are no two ways about it. And unfortunately, what we've seen, 7 of the 10 fastest growing counties have been in the D.C. area. This is not a sustainable economy. And Republicans make this mistake as well. It's not enough to send a big government Republican to D.C. And the reality is, we can't let Hillary Clinton win, but it's not enough to send a big government Republican. We need to send somebody who won't just slow the growth rate, but will actually cut back government spending. Everybody knows we need to repeal Obamacare, have a sensible all-of-the-above energy plan, have lower, flatter taxes, rein in the EPA. But if we're not also serious about cutting back government spending, the rest of it won't be enough. We have to cut the government economy if we want to grow the American economy.
Okay, now cutting the government economy can be difficult considering how entrenched the bureaucrats are. I mean, don't we have a fourth branch of government now in the bureaucracy, and how do you get rid of them?
It's a great point. Look, it's going to take courage and backbone. You can't just talk about it. Of all the candidates running, I'm the only one that's reduced the size of government. We have cut our budget here in Louisiana 26%, 30,000 fewer state bureaucrats than the day I took office. But as a result, we're a top 10 state for job creation, 8 credit upgrades. But you're right, it's not easy, and you've got to fight with folks within your own party at the federal level. Why in the world is the Federal Department of Education doing Common Core? Why in the world do we have billions of dollars? You look at the Federal Department of Education, this is primarily supposed to be a state and local responsibility. Why is the EPA trying to regulate water in our backyards? There are so many wasteful programs. The Constitution tells the federal government its first responsibility is to protect us, and it needs to do that. Yet this administration, the Obama administration, is hollowing out the military and having the federal government, do all kinds of things it never should have been doing in the first place. So you're right. Under Republicans and Democrats, government spending has grown. We have these unelected bureaucrats that are taking more and more power. We've got to not just slow the growth rate, but shrink the size of government. Everybody else can talk about it. I'm the only candidate that's actually already gotten it done.
Okay, dealing with small business, as long as we're talking bureaucracy here, big business can handle and oftentimes work with government on creating more bureaucracy because it hurts the small business. I see that every single day. I'm in a small downtown area surrounded by small business people. So now we've got to get the bureaucracy out of small business, and that includes Obamacare as well. But what do you do when the critics come along and say you're hurting the middle class because they're not going to get their health care because government's not providing it. You've heard the song and dance before. What do you do?
Absolutely. Well, two things. First, let's talk about healthcare specifically, but secondly, let's talk about regulations and small businesses, because those are both very good points. So when it comes to Obamacare, look, I was the first candidate to come up with a plan to get rid of all of Obamacare. There's only one other candidate with a plan, that's Jeb, but unfortunately his plan creates a new entitlement program. All these other guys talk about getting rid of Obamacare, but they haven't told us how they would do it. My plan gets rid of Obamacare, but focuses on actually driving down costs. Yeah, the left likes to claim victory. They say, oh, look, all these people have cards, whether it's Medicaid or Obamacare coverage. But the reality is there was a study in Oregon. Even giving people Medicaid expansion in coverage does not improve, on average, physical health care outcomes. And just giving somebody an Obamacare card, if their deductibles are high, if their networks are tight, they may still not be able to afford their health care. We need to be driving down costs. That's the real issue. And so my plan, you can go to BobbyJindal.com and see the details. My plan's got 16 details, but three basic things. One, it lowers costs. Standard tax deduction allows people to buy insurance across state lines. It allows people to have access to HSAs, health savings and medical savings accounts. It cracks down on frivolous lawsuits, allows for voluntary purchasing pools, drives down average premiums by $5,000 for the average family. Secondly, we give targeted help to those that need help buying their health care, for example, those with pre-existing conditions. That doesn't mean expanding Medicaid or growing government. It means through the states, not a federal program. And then third, most importantly, we put doctors and patients back in charge. But there are too many Republicans that fall into this trap and think, well, the left is going to beat us up if we don't have a cheaper version of Obamacare. We don't need to be Obamacare light. We don't need to be cheaper versions of the Democratic Party. We don't need two liberal parties in this country. But, Glenn, you raised another important point, which is something that I think a lot of people sometimes miss, which is big government loves to work with big business because big business can afford the compliance. Crony capitalism means these big businesses can hire the lobbyists to get them favorable deals. They can comply with the regulations. It's the small businesses that get hurt. And unfortunately, you've got Republicans and Democrats in D.C. who don't understand that. The Republican Party is not the party of big government, but we should not become the party of big business either. And we need to be very careful about this temptation towards crony capitalism. That's why I'm for getting rid of all the corporate welfare in the IRS and the tax code. And I'm also for cracking down on these regulations, especially the EPA. There needs to be, at the very least, an independent cost-benefit analysis before they can do a regulation and an up or down vote in Congress so these bureaucrats can't continue to run our economy into the ground.
Okay, now you mentioned EPA, so I'm dumping all my other questions and diving onto that one. Well, that's a hot-button issue out here. I'm a Florida boy, and I didn't have to deal as much with the EPA doing radio down there as I did when I came out to this part of the country. So we're heard in Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, Nebraska. There's a lot of energy out here. And the EPA essentially walks onto somebody's property with a notepad and makes up regulations as they go, makes up fines you would not believe, like Andy Johnson, we covered his story, and went out with cameras to cover his story. $75,000 a day because he built a legal stock pond in his backyard. But then I'm also watching coal, gas, and oil. Rigs are being shut down. People are unemployed out here when we should be having a boom going on. It's the Bureau of Land Management. It's the EPA. And, Bobby, they're making their own rules.
They absolutely are. And I'll tell you, look, we've got a robust energy economy in Louisiana as well. I'll give you an example where they almost cost us billions of dollars in investment and thousands of jobs. Nucor, one of America's most successful steel company, back in 2008, was looking to put a $3 billion plus investment across 5 phases in a modern steel facility. 5 phases would have created 1,250 permanent jobs, paying $75,000 on average, 4,800 indirect jobs, so 6,000 total jobs. You remember in 2008, in the middle of the financial crisis and recession, these are great paying jobs, great investment for any state. Well, they looked around. They decided back then they wanted to come to Louisiana, but end of 2008, they wanted to build in America. Because of uncertainty about the EPA, for some time they began to reconsider whether they should go overseas, maybe build this in Brazil or somewhere else, and then still make that steel and export it to America. Now think about how is that, regardless of what you believe, how is that good for the environment? these jobs that's still going to be made, they'll just be made somewhere else in a country where the rules are probably looser than our environmental rules. It's certainly not good for our economy. We fought, we won, we eventually convinced Nucor to build that facility in America. They've built the first phase in Louisiana already, but it was delayed, and part of the delay was, again, this uncertainty about the EPA. So this is having real-world consequences. The left, they've declared war on coal. They want to shut, they've made it very clear. The president said before he was president, he and the vice president have been caught before talking about this war on coal. They've been heard talking about wanting to bankrupt anybody that wants to build a coal facility. But it's just today a war on coal. It'll be a war on oil and gas next. They don't like fossil fuels, and the reality is we can have affordable energy, we can have a clean environment and a strong economy. They're not mutually exclusive. We have sued the EPA over the power plant rule and the water rule, another ridiculous rule. They're trying to regulate the water in your backyards. There's this arrogance from the left that they think government knows best, that we at the state and local levels and the private sector don't care or don't know how to protect the environment, or we don't know how to educate our kids. Or you just go down the list. We're not smart enough to have Second Amendment gun rights or First Amendment religious liberty rights. We've got to push back against this arrogance, and the EPA is the latest example of that.
Well, where did we get into? And here again, look, I'm an equal opportunity offender, so I pick on the Democrats as much as I pick on the Republicans. Where did we wind up with the Republican Party even thinking that we needed an IRS, that we needed an EPA, we need a national energy policy, or for that matter, we need some kind of an economic policy to come out of the federal government in order to tell us what to do? For that matter, we needed a policy to guide us on our own healthcare decisions. Whatever happened to individualism and free markets?
Absolutely. Well, and Glenn, it brings me really, we keep thinking if we send a few more Republicans to D.C., it'll fix things. We need structural change in D.C. We need a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution. We need term limits. We need part-time legislators who come back here and work in the real world under the rules they passed for the rest of us. One of the worst things that I think has happened, the Founding Fathers never wanted this permanent governing political class. And we have folks in both parties who go there to make six-figure salaries and stay there to make seven-figure salaries as lobbyists. That's not what they intended. The Founding Fathers intended for regular people from their farms, their businesses, their families to leave, to go serve temporarily at a sacrifice, serve their country, and then come home. We don't have that anymore, and I think that's been a big part of the problem. You're right. We've got Republicans and Democrats that forget there's a 10th Amendment to the Constitution, and they forget there should be limits on the federal government's power. I was opposed to Obamacare every step of the way. We were part of the lawsuit. I think the Supreme Court got the decision wrong both times. But one of the most dangerous things by them saying that the federal government can mandate that we have to buy this product is it really opens the door to all kinds of expansions of federal power. It makes you wonder, what are the limits? Are there any real effective limits on what the federal government can or cannot do? And I think that's a scary thought for those of us that are conservatives that want to get back to a limited government.
Well, you're coming to Wyoming to speak. Will you have a chance to speak with Governor Meade?
I will indeed. I'm looking forward to seeing your governor. I'm also looking forward to meeting folks. We'll be there all day on Monday. We're coming at the invitation of the Wyoming Liberty Group, and folks are welcome to come out. They have an event in the evening, but there'll be several different events throughout the day that they've hosted, and we'll get a chance to meet with the governor. And they've asked me to come up and talk a little bit about our Louisiana experiences and what we have done, both in cutting spending and doing statewide school choice and some of the other things we've done in our state. We've purposely said we would not expand Medicaid under Obamacare. We have governed with conservative principles, and I think that you're seeing, as a result, more people working, earning a higher income than ever before. It just shows conservative principles work. It's not that they've been tried and found lacking in D.C. They just haven't tried them in D.C.
Right. Well, and since you're coming and having a chance to speak to the governor, I would hope you would talk to him about some of the things that you've done there, because he continues to want to expand Medicaid here in the state of Wyoming. And I'm looking for someone to talk him out of it. So if you could have a word with him about that for me, would you do me a favor here? Just tell him, why did you turn it down in your state? Why did you think it was a bad idea?
Well, a couple of things. Look, I think Matt's a great guy. We happen to disagree on this issue, but I do look forward to seeing him. On Medicaid, the reason we did not expand in Louisiana, there were several reasons. One, I think that making more people dependent on government is a mistake. Secondly, I think that it doesn't make any sense in our state for every uninsured person that they would have covered, they would have taken more than one more insured person out of private coverage. So why in the world how does that make sense? Because there are no anti-crowd-out provisions. Third, this is going to be increasingly expensive for our taxpayers, over $1 billion, up to maybe $2 billion over 10 years. just on the state side. Now, I know some of these governors have said, "Oh, it's free money." On the federal side, it's not free money. I'm a federal taxpayer. Mm-hmm. Why in the world are we spending money we don't have? At some point, we're going to stop digging that hole. And then finally, Medicaid is not a very effective. It hasn't been proven to be a very effective way to provide coverage. The reality is, it wasn't designed to cover able-bodied adults. This expansion prioritizes able-bodied adults over disabled children and others. I don't think that's right. But most fundamentally, I just don't think that right now, I don't think we need to be making more people dependent on government. I don't think the American dream is to have the government take care of you. I think the American dream is to be able to work hard, get an education, and be able to provide for yourself and your family. I am for providing very targeted assistance to people that need help. I do that in my health plan through high-risk pools, reinsurance mechanisms. It's paid for. It does not involve a new entitlement program. It does not involve new taxes. I think Medicaid expansion is a mistake, and I think that we shouldn't have more and more Americans dependent on government.
Well, and those states that have expanded it, they've had people come pouring in from other states to take advantage of the system, and it's completely overwhelmed them. I worry about that in the state of Wyoming. Hey, before I go here, and you've got to plug, of course, your speaking engagement down there, because I'm good friends with the Wyoming Liberty Group and big supporters of Susan Gore since I moved to the state of Wyoming. I'm going to give you something for the next debate, a little tidbit you can throw in there. When they get around to talking about the Iranian deal again, It just suddenly struck me. It does not matter if they wrote a good deal or if they wrote a bad deal. Iran is lying. So what difference does it make whether it's a good deal or not?
Well, you look, there's a lot. It is a bad deal, but there's a lot of truth to that. They have violated previous UN resolutions, and this is not. There are no anytime, anywhere inspections in this deal. I mean, right. This is not trust but verified. This is, and there are, not only that, there are these side deals we don't know about. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons this is a bad deal. But you're right, their track record's not a good one.
Yeah, it just simply doesn't matter. I just wanted to put that bug in the ear of somebody who was running for president. Would somebody say that? It doesn't matter if they wrote a good deal or not. Iran is lying, and we're going to have to deal with a nuclear Iran at some point if we don't actually do something about it. But okay, let's get this down one more time. Wyoming Liberty Group has invited you to speak, and you'll be where and when?
Well, we'll be there all day Monday. There is a general reception at the Wyoming Ballroom at the Little America Hotel and Resort, and then will be the actual speech. The event is in the evening, starting at 6:30. Again, at the Little America Hotel and Resort. Now, again, there are multiple events with different tickets for the different events, ranging on when people want to attend. But I would encourage them to contact the Wyoming Liberty Group. There are a number of receptions and events on Monday. I'm sorry, this coming Monday.
Okay, Governor, pleasure to have you on. Thanks for coming on with us, and I'm going to try to get down there and see you. Like you, I'm a busy guy. I'm just curious here. What is your schedule like? Do you have room to breathe?
You know, look, it is a busy schedule. Obviously, running for president is. Yeah. But I will say this. I've got 3 young kids at home. I never complain. If I ever call my wife and say I'm tired, she goes, "Great. You stay home with the 3 kids. I'll go to Iowa. I'll go to Wyoming. I'll go." And I've never wanted to take her up on that deal.
Right. Sounds good. Thank you, Governor. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Glenn.